Around since the 90s, suspension seat posts aren't anything new, but they're something that's seen an increase in popularity in recent years. Unlike what you find on full suspension bikes, which are aimed at capability, the suspension's main goal is to smooth out the road or trail on a rigid frame for a more comfortable ride. After testing out Redshift's suspension post offering, I decided to give the legendary Thudbuster from Cane Creek a try. I've been using both their ST and LT versions for a couple of months, and now it's time to tell you what I think of them. So, let's get into it. The Thudbuster is arguably the most popular suspension seat post out there, and is something that has been in Cane Creek's lineup for more than 2 decades. The latest iterations were released in 2020 with an updated version of the classic ST post and a redesigned version of their cushier LT. Both versions are available in 27.2, 30.9, and 31.6 seat post sizes, and have 5 different levels of elastomers available, something I'll get into in a minute. Where these posts are really different from each other is in the amount of travel, weight limits, and total weight of the post itself. The ST has 50 millimeters of travel and a weight limit of 330 pounds, while the LT, on the other hand, steps the travel up to 90 mils with a drop in the weight limit down to 250 pounds. The ST is also much lighter physically, coming in at 580 grams in a 31.6, with the LT being almost 200 grams heavier at 750. Cane Creek also has their extra blingy, extra light E-Silk model, which comes in carbon or aluminum and only 35 millimeters of travel, but I didn't get to test one of those. All versions feature an elastomer-based suspension, which uses what is essentially a big fancy piece of rubber to absorb vibrations and bumps in the road. The parallel linkage design has a travel path directly in line with, but opposite to the path that your rear wheel takes when it hits a bump, and it keeps your saddle to pedal distance consistent throughout the travel. That's all the nitty-gritty and basically everything you could read on the website, so let's jump into my experience with them. One of my favorite things about these posts is how easy they are to install and adjust. Like I mentioned, these are an elastomer-based design, so the only thing that can really wear out is that block of rubber or the individual pivots. There's nothing to lube or oil or grease, and if you want a softer or a firmer ride, you can swap the elastomers out without any tools. The posts come with the medium elastomer pre-installed, but they sent me one of each in the firmness range, from extra soft to extra firm, so I got a chance to swap things out, and it was super simple. The ST was a bit easier to swap than the LT, but both only take a minute or so, and with practice, you can get even faster at it. If you're riding in a lot of mud and rain, you can also get the optional Thud glove, which is like a neoprene jacket to keep things from getting too dirty and wearing out prematurely. Another thing I appreciated about these posts is the seat clamp is a single bolt design for both fastening the seat to the post as well as adjusting the seat angle. That might not sound like a big deal, but as someone who swaps seat posts and saddles and bikes a lot, it's nice to have a really simple and easy to use design. I installed these posts on 2 different bikes, with the ST on a Salsa Cutthroat and the LT on a State 4130 all-road. I rode the ST for a while before trying out the LT and had originally swapped the medium elastomer out for the firm, as the firm is supposed to be best for riders in the 200 to 250 pound range. I ended up putting the medium back in halfway through my first ride though, because I quickly realized it was so firm I felt like the post was barely even moving under me. The medium felt much better, albeit still firmer than I maybe would have expected, given that I was over the weight limit, but washboards and potholes were noticeably smoothed out. I'm not sure if there's technically a break-in period on these elastomers, but the suspension seemed to be a little more active or plush the more that I rode it. I don't mean that in a worn-out way, but more like it just needed to get a few miles in before it really started working as intended. With that experience on the ST in mind, I kept the medium elastomer in the LT version and went for a first ride. I kind of had the opposite experience here. The ride was so soft and the suspension so active that I didn't even make it a quarter mile before I stopped and swapped the firm elastomer in. After that, the ride was perfect. While both posts do a great job at minimizing vibrations and chatter from the road or trail, the LT made me feel like I was riding on pavement. It was so smooth. I think most of that is due to it having almost double the travel, but I also wonder if it has to do with the design of the elastomer itself. The elastomer on the LT is all one piece. It's like this big thing with wings almost, while the ST fits basically inside of an outer shell of rubber, which seems to create a firmer, more efficient ride feel at all times. One of my favorite things about these posts is how well they do at keeping a consistent distance from the pedals. Nothing is more annoying than riding a bike with a saddle that's too low, something you'd expect if your post is moving. But the parallel linkage moves you backward as well as down, so the difference remains essentially the same no matter how hard of a hit you take or how far in that suspension travel you are. The final thing I'll mention is not necessarily about these posts, but suspension posts in general. I've always felt like these posts are just for comfort, but when I was riding down a chunky dirt road the other day, I realized there actually is some performance benefit to it. You see, when you're heading downhill on a hardtail or a rigid bike and things start to get bumpy, you often need to stand to keep yourself from getting basically bucked off the bike. It's not like mountain biking where you stand so you can move the bike around, but kind of the opposite where you're trying to keep the bike from moving you around. Unfortunately, this can also cause some unwanted unweighting of the rear tire, some skittishness back there, and a little more forward weight shift than you'd like, especially if you're on drop bars and in the drops. On my recent ride though, I realized I could keep my butt on the saddle, maintain a good and comfortable position, and let the suspension seat post keep me planted. Maybe that's an obvious thing that I've just somehow missed, but it wasn't until I tried this with the confidence of that extra long LT post that I realized how nice it was. Overall, these Thudbuster seat posts lived up to their reputation by giving me a lot more comfort in a super simple package. They're easy to work on and have a simple enough design that there's not much that could go wrong on them if you're touring or bikepacking for weeks on end. And that's exactly the time that you would want to have these suspension seat posts. They make it so that you are comfortable all day, you don't get super worn out, and you could just keep riding for hours and hours. Aesthetically, I think the ST is a much better looking post, just to be completely honest, but I still think I'd pick the LT for the longer travel design, because I like to hit some old mining roads and the occasional mountain bike trail, and sometimes it gets really rocky or rutted, or you just don't know what you're gonna hit. If I was doing a lot more traditional gravel or commuting, or I only hit super rocky back roads a small amount of the time, the ST would definitely be my choice. The truth is though, you really can't go wrong with either of these posts. Thanks again to Cane Creek for sending these posts out for me to review. I've put the links to their website and to these posts specifically down below. If there are any questions I didn't answer, leave a comment and I'll be sure to reply. And finally, if you want to support me, be sure to share this video, subscribe, buy some stickers, leave a super thanks. I could really use your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.